First, I'd like to say what a great honor it is to give tribute to my friend Mark. Thank you, Shirley, and the family for giving me this opportunity. My view, it might be a little bit different than what you'd be expecting, because Mark and I were co-workers in service here and members of the leadership team. And we spent a lot of time on leadership activities. To me, Mark was as good a friend as you could ask for. With all the projects, programs, and people anxious to be involved in a dynamic ministry of this church, the synergy of our relationship seemed to be just what our church needed. And it worked well for over 30 years. It was my privilege, honor, and blessing to serve with Mark for most of those 30 years in the leadership here at the Royal Oak Salvation Army. Mark's story really began on a cold winter evening at the Pontiac Silverdome. The captain got his hands on a bundle of tickets to go to the Billy Graham night, sponsored by dozens and dozens of churches in the area. While singing Just As I Am, Mark heard the Lord speaking to him and felt the hand of God encouraging him to step out. From that night on, Mark solidified his commitment to God and got busy learning, growing, and becoming more active in the Salvation Army. With the encouragement and the careful mentoring of Captain Swanson, the path Mark was to take was becoming clearer every day. Soon the day came when he would be installed as the Corps Sergeant Major by Captains Barry and Sue Swanson. We all felt an air of confidence that our church was in good hands. Between Barry, Sue, Mark, and the rest of the Corps leadership team that came and went over the years, we endeavored to move our Corps and its various ministries forward as we believed God directed us to do. We all knew that our top leaders were godly people, guided by the Holy Spirit, making selfless decisions on his behalf. Mark was truly a Colossians 3:23-24 guy. Let me read those two verses for you quickly here. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving, and he's in the midst of receiving his reward. Over the years, I grew to love and appreciate the character and dignity of Mark as I watched him in his various roles as a husband, father, grandfather, servant, worker, leader, colleague, classmate, confidant, and friend. He got along with everybody, and everybody got along with him. Mark walked the talk and lived the life. He brought wisdom, maturity, intuition, compassion, and a good business sense, a godly heart and a desire to learn and to grow, and a self-disciplined life. With his great sense of humor, Mark always appreciated a good joke. He and I were accused of being Bert and Ernie. When we would converse quietly in the back of the chapel, or when Dale Johnson joined us, we became the Three Amigos. He was the kind of guy that had a sound and somber acuity. You could laugh with him 1 minute and get to the serious matters the next. As the top leader in our church for over 30 years, Mark accepted all the responsibilities of the position and fulfilled all the duties required to be they easy or difficult. There were so many incredibly wonderful things that happened in our church and the church family over the years, many of which were supported, encouraged, and instigated sometimes by Mark. How many times did we enjoy watching Mark parade a newborn around the chapel on its first Sunday in church, welcoming new officers or visitors to our family, or announcing a significant event or accomplishment in the life of a member of the congregation that allowed us all to enjoy the celebration of God's blessing. There were many difficult times that required a tough, steady hand to resolve. I watched Mark deal with many of these situations over the years. He never avoided the tough things. He never backed down because he always sought God's guidance. As you see, Mark was a man of God, a praying, Bible-believing man who had a good understanding and a functioning relationship with God. He had a godly intuition and a sense of propriety when godly matters were involved. Mark was a man of courage. He was never afraid to deal with people in their uncivility or inaccuracy. He never backed down from situations that could become dangerous or complicated when safety was at risk. He was never afraid to speak truth to power and was always gracious in doing so. Sometimes things just needed to be done. Sometimes things just needed to be said. Sometimes things just needed to be stopped or even started. It was always important that godly justice and righteousness needed to prevail. He always seemed to sense when something needed to be done or somebody was in need of a special attention of one sort or another. Sometimes it was simply a few words of encouragement, a listening ear, a visitation, helping with a project, or simply a hug. And we all know that Mark was a hugger. It wasn't unusual to see Mark with a paintbrush, wallpaper scraper, a mop, a broom, a snow shovel, or a garbage bag in his hand. He just did what needed to be done. My friend Mark always had a good perspective on his role in leadership. He always knew that he was not only the lay leader of the church, but the representative of the members of the congregation. He was always a ready helper and confidant of the officers in place at the time and to soldiers who needed his trust and confidence. Over the years of Mark's tenure as Sergeant Major, we had 23 officers appointed to Royal Oak Corps, and Mark was a confidant to most of them. Regardless of where they came from, what their age or experience was, Mark held them in high esteem, believing that they were appointed by God to lead the people of our congregation, to fulfill the mission and ministry of the Army here in Royal Oak. He also believed that there was much to be gained by a good working relationship with each officer as they came and went. Like many in the congregation, some officers had much to learn about God, about people, about ministry, and they could learn much from their Royal Oak experience. For many, their time here was like being in officer graduate school. I believe if you polled most officers, they would say that they left Royal Oak a much better officer than when they arrived and would hold Mark up with loving affection. I believe Mark had much to do with their spiritual education and their leadership education. To see over the past 70 years or so, Mark was only the 5th Sergeant Major. In 70 years, we only had 5. And Mark was one of the lucky 5. So now, dear friend, it's time to say goodbye. You ran a good race and you fought a good fight. Now it's time for you to enjoy your well-earned reward in heaven. I thank you, Mark, for your friendship. I thank you for your leadership. I thank you for your wonderful godly example through your life. I look forward to meeting you once again in heaven, and I know that there are many already there celebrating your arrival. Well done, good and faithful servant.